I lost the department head election for the 5th time running. The hospital director sneered openly in front of everyone. No matter how skilled you are, you'll spend your whole life working under others. Insults crashed over me like a tidal wave, tearing my heart to shreds. I slammed my palm hard against the table and shot to my feet. Dead silence swept the conference room. If this place doesn't value me, there's somewhere else that will. I tossed my resignation letter down and stormed out without a single backward glance. The next day, the hospital's administrative office phone was blown up nonstop with incoming calls. Hashtag chapter 1. Bang! A deaf crack shook the heavy mahogany conference table before me. The teacup lid on top bounced high and clattered back down, a shrill, crisp echo ringing through the silent room. Every department head and hospital leader in the room fixed their eyes on my hands braced against the tabletop. Those hands were famous across the entire cardiac surgery field for their rock-steady precision, yet they trembled violently now, consumed by unbridled rage. The old overhead projector hummed in the background, dust motes swirling through its beam of light that fell straight on Director Gao Yuan's greasy, arrogant face. It wasn't physical pain I felt. My heart had shattered. I devoted 10 years of my life to this hospital, 3,600-odd days where the operating room had been my second home. My minimally invasive coronary artery bypass graft technique had put municipal #1 hospital on the national map. Countless peers traveled far to learn from me. Hordes of patients sought me out specifically for treatment. The papers I'd published, awards I'd won, students I'd trained, and all the prestige and revenue I'd brought the hospital filled volumes. But because I refused to curry favor, hand out gifts, or fawn over superiors at drinking parties, I'd lost the department head race 5 years in a row, 5 separate elections. This time, the post even went to his nephew Gao Wei, someone fresh back from overseas who'd only done superficial study abroad, who struggled to complete even secondary-level surgeries independently. Gao Yuan froze for a split second at my outburst, then quickly recovered the calm bureaucratic air he wore like a mask. His gaze shifted from shock to a cold mix of contempt and impatience. Zhang Ran, what do you think you're doing? Slamming the table at the hospital party committee meeting. Are you staging a rebellion? His voice was soft, yet carried the oppressive weight of a man who'd issued orders all his life. I slowly lifted my head, my gaze sweeping past rows of shocked, sympathetic, or gloating faces before locking directly onto his. My heart bled, yet my tone was eerily calm. Director Gao, you're wrong. Oh! He drawled the word, leaning back into his oversized armchair like he was watching a show. Where exactly did I go wrong? Being skilled doesn't mean you're doomed to work under others forever. I enunciated each syllable, grinding them out between my teeth. Being skilled means I get to choose who I work under, or choose not to. I pulled the resignation letter I'd written, and hesitated to submit from my pocket. The paper was crumpled tight, just like my heart worn thin over 10 years of hardship. I slammed it hard down on the table in front of Gao Yuan. The thin sheet hit the wood with a sound like a death sentence being handed down. If this place doesn't value me, there's somewhere else that will. I turned and left without hesitation. The click of my heels on polished marble echoed sharp and resolute, a funeral knell for my decade of youth. The silence behind me shattered. I heard Gao Yuan's dismissive huff and a scathing line dripping with scorn. Ungrateful fool. Right after that came Gao Wei's cloying, sickly sycophantic voice. Uncle, don't waste your breath on her. She's just a tech fanatic with no grasp of human relations. It's better she's gone. She was just hogging the spot anyway. Well said, Xiao Wei. The cardiac surgery department's yours now. Let me toast to your promotion. Another deputy director chimed in. Flattery filled the air, glasses clinking in celebration. My departure was treated as a trivial footnote, even a cause for celebration. I did not look back. I feared if I turned around, tears would burst free without restraint. Back in my office, my young apprentice, Zhou Heng, waited anxiously by the door. When he saw me, his eyes welled up as if he'd spotted a lifeline. Teacher, I heard what happened. He trailed off, catching sight of the small cardboard box tucked in my arms. His face drained of color in an instant. Don't act rashly, teacher. The director only spoke in anger. What will become of our cardiac surgery unit if you leave? A flicker of warmth stirred in my chest looking at the young surgeon I'd personally mentored, who could now handle cases on his own, but it faded fast. Hospitals function fine no matter who's gone, I said flatly, emotionless. I stepped inside, my gaze sweeping the walls covered in silk banners of praise. Superb skill, compassionate heart, second Hua Tua, outstanding physician and craftsman. Each patient's smiling face and grateful words now read like bitter mockery. I tossed my newly awarded National Distinguished Cardiovascular Expert trophy alongside all my personal belongings into the box with sharp, unhesitating movements, no trace of longing. At last, I pulled a USB drive from my desktop and handed it to him. All my surgical notes, full clinical datasets, and every detail of the latest optimized minimally bypass technique are stored here. Zhou Heng refused to take it, eyes glistening, voice trembling. I don't want this. I just want you to stay. I forced the drive into his palm. Take care of yourself from now on. I lifted the box and took one final glance at the space where I'd fought for 10 years. Outside the window, white magnolias bloomed pure and flawless, but the air inside this building felt thick and suffocating. I told no one goodbye. All my former colleagues sat silent in that conference room just now, none daring to speak a word in my defense. When I stepped out the hospital gates, cold evening wind swept over my face. I drew a deep breath. For the first time in years, the air tasted free. That night my phone buzzed nonstop, flooded with WeChat messages and calls from coworkers, leaders, even random administrative staff I barely knew. I ignored every alert and powered the device off. I took a hot shower and stood before the mirror. AT35, I wore black-rimmed glasses and plain solid-color tees with no makeup, my eyes dulled from constant exhaustion. My features screamed professional and reliable, but never good at currying favor. I silently bid farewell to the woman in the glass. Jiang Ran, from today onward, you live only for yourself. I slept deeper that night than I had in a decade. No midnight emergency calls to jolt me awake, no replaying surgical steps half asleep. A weight lifted I'd never known I carried. I had no idea the cardiac surgery department I'd built from scratch was about to face a catastrophic storm the moment I drifted off to sleep. Hashtag chapter 2. I was jolted awake the next morning by frantic knocking at the door. I thought it was property staff and opened the door groggily, only to see Zhou Heng's panic-stricken face. He still wore his hospital scrubs, beads of sweat coating his forehead, chest heaving. He'd clearly sprinted all the way here. Teacher, something terrible's happened. I frowned and stepped aside to let him in, walking to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. Slow down. Nothing's irreparable. I leisurely brewed pour-over coffee, the scent of ground beans mixing with morning sunlight streaming through the windows, lifting my mood. Zhou Heng drained the glass in one gulp, gasping for breath. Old Mr. Chen, founder of Chen Group, suffered a massive myocardial infarction early this morning. He's in our ICU in critical condition. My hand froze mid-motion. Mr. Chen was the business magnate featured in financial magazines. More importantly, he'd been scheduled for my minimally invasive bypass surgery the following week. This operation carried far more weight than just a medical procedure. It was tied to a 100 million yuan donation of top-tier medical equipment Chen Group had promised our hospital, Director Gao's biggest political achievement this year, his key stepping stone for promotion. The family specifically demanded you perform the operation. Zhou Heng's voice cracked with distress. But you've resigned. I blew gently on my coffee and sipped lightly, tone cool and detached, laced with faint sarcasm. Don't you have Director Gao now? This is the perfect chance for him to prove himself. Zhou Heng's face crumpled in distress. He can't do it. He stood in front of all the specialists yesterday with your surgical plan and rambled nonsense, unable to even explain basic preoperative preparations. Mr. Chen's son flew into a rage right there. I could picture the scene vividly. Gao Wei was all talk with zero practical skill. There was no way he could grasp my micron-precise custom surgical technique. Zhou Heng's next words confirmed my assumption. Director Chen marched straight into the meeting room and pointed at Gao, screaming that if anything happened to his father at our hospital, not only would the 100 million donation vanish, he'd sue us until the hospital went bankrupt. Director Gao flew into a panic and yelled at the administrative and HR teams to track you down no matter what. The whole hospital's in chaos now. The office's phone lines are swamped. HR staff are digging up every trace of your contact info and address, blowing up my WeChat nonstop. I pretended I had no clue where you were. It's like a hornet's nest got poked. Everyone's running around blind looking for you. He stared at me anxiously after finishing his story, waiting for my response. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching traffic flow outside the window, utterly unmoved, even faintly amused. Just yesterday, they'd written me off as disposable, my expertise worthless. Overnight, I'd become the sole person capable of saving the hospital's future. How bitterly ironic. My value hadn't been proven by 10 years of dedication and hundreds of successful surgeries. It only registered when their arrogance and incompetence crashed headfirst into harsh reality. Teacher, what do we do now? Zhou Heng asked tentatively. I set my mug down and turned to face him. Let Director Gao handle it. He's the one sitting in the high position after all. I stretched out on the balcony, every muscle relaxing. I appreciate you rushing over to tell me, but this is their problem now, not mine that don't get mixed up in it either. Go back and say you couldn't find me. Zhou Heng opened his mouth to argue, then fell silent at the sight of my calm, unyielding gaze. He left dejectedly. I sighed watching his retreating back. He still clung to hope for that hospital, but my heart had turned cold completely. I turned on a variety show at home and ate breakfast, scrolling through celebrity gossip while chaos unfolded at the hospital miles away. Peace settled over my small apartment at a rare comfort. Hashtag chapter 3. At 10 a.m., my doorbell blared nonstop, like someone hammering the frame instead of pressing the button that I peered through the peephole and saw Gao Yuan standing outside. Gone was the dignified director from the conference room yesterday. His suit jacket hung unbuttoned, tie askew, hair disheveled, anxiety etched deep into his well-maintained face. The office director trailed behind, dabbing sweat off his forehead with a handkerchief non-stop. I refused to open the door. The ringing stopped, replaced by violent knocking and Gao's shouts. Jiang Ran, I know you're in there. Stop hiding. I wandered back to the sofa and picked up a medical journal, letting him scream outside undisturbed. 10 minutes passed before the noise faded. Then my phone rang from an unknown number. I hesitated and answered, hearing Gao's suppressed fury on the line. You've grown quite bold, ignoring my calls. Where did you get my new number? Director Gao, what can I do for you? My tone remained placid. Don't play dumb. Mr. Chen's surgery waits for you. Come back to the hospital at once. His tone was a command, not a request, as if he forgot I no longer worked under him. A soft laugh escaped me. Haven't you forgotten I tendered my resignation yesterday? I'm no longer employed by Municipal No. 1 Hospital, with no obligation to operate for anyone here. Jiang Ran, he roared. Don't act childish. Do you realize how critical the surgery is for the hospital? Can you bear the fallout if you hold it up? Remember who signed off on your medical license, who gave you a position here. He tried to bind me with so-called past favors, and the last flicker of softness I'd held for him died entirely. You claimed my skill meant nothing not long ago. Why suddenly you can't do without it? I shot back coldly. Silence hung on the line for several long seconds before he ground words out through gritted teeth. I'm offering you a way back. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. This path back is too steep. I'm afraid I'll fall. Respect isn't handed to me by anyone. I earn it myself. I hung up and blacklisted the number. Silence returned to my home at last. Yet I'd underestimated Gao Yuan's shamelessness. Half an hour later, someone knocked at my door again. This time I opened it, knowing he wouldn't back down easily. Gao glared daggers at me the second the door swung open, rage radiating off him. Jiang Ran, you. Before he finished speaking, I lifted the bowl of cold-boiled water I'd set by the shoe rack and dumped its full contents straight over his head. Water dripped down his greasy hair and twisted features, leaving him a miserable, stunned mess. The office director beside him stared aghast. Get out! I uttered a single frigid word, icy as winter frost. Gao trembled violently, pointing at me as he stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. You're insane! How dare you! A mild, magnetic male voice echoed from the stairwell at that moment. Director Gao, no need for such fury. I glanced over to see a man in tailored dark gray overcoat walking slowly upward, around 40 years old, gold-rimmed glasses lending him an elegant, profound aura. A young assistant carrying a briefcase followed close behind. A black Maybach sat quietly parked downstairs, understated luxury radiating from its frame. I recognized him. Li Wenba, director of Huimin Private Top-Tier Hospital, a legendary figure in the industry famed for sharp vision and decisive tactics. We crossed paths once at a national academic conference, and I'd never imagined he'd show up at my doorstep now. Li Wenba acted as if he hadn't noticed Gao's soaked, furious face, walking straight to me with a gentle smile. Dr. Zheng, I've long admired your work. I'm Li Wenba, director of Huimin Hospital. We shook hands, his palm warm and firm. I've waited 3 years for you to resign, he said, a statement that shook me to my core. Gao froze solid beside us. Ignoring him entirely, Li took a contract from his assistant and held it out to me, voice clear and sincere. Dr. Jiang, this formal offer is for you. Chief Administrative Director and Lead Cardiac Surgeon of Huimin's Cardiac Surgery Department. A national standard laboratory named after you, unlimited funding and equipment for all your research projects. Every core member of your team can transfer here with full upgraded salaries and official staffing positions if you wish. The post-tax annual salary, 8 million yuan. 3 million signing bonus deposited immediately upon contract signing. His face paled further with every term he listed, shifting from ashen to purple, a chaotic spectrum of color across his features. Eli smiled at me, eyes full of genuine admiration and expectation. Huimin only needs pure technical specialists like you. You'll never have to navigate tangled office politics or tedious social events here. All you need to do is what you excel at and love most. Save lives with your surgical skill, and we will remove every obstacle standing in your way. I stared at his sincere eyes, then glanced at Gao's defeated form, emotions swirling inside me. IT turned out my value hadn't gone unrecognized, just unappreciated at my old workplace. Someone truly valued pure expertise, willing to offer the highest respect and sincerity. Hashtag chapter 4. I did not hesitate. I didn't even skim the contract fine print. People like Li Wenba never resorted to petty tricks. I took the Parker fountain pen his assistant handed me and signed my name, Jiang Ran, boldly across the bottom of the page, never glancing at the twisted, livid Gao Yuan beside me. This signature severed every tie binding me to Municipal No. 1 Hospital and my wasted decade there. Pleasure cooperating, Li extended his hand again, a genuine grin spreading across his face. Likewise, Director Li. We shook firmly. The second the ink dried, Lee pulled out his phone and dialed a number, tone crisp and decisive. Dispatch our top emergency transport vehicle and full ECM expert team to Municipal No. One hospital at once. Complete all transfer paperwork within 30 minutes. At the word transfer, Gao exploded like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. You can't do that. Mr. Chen is our hospital's patient. Before I could reply, a cold voice sounded behind him. Patients hold the legal right to choose their hospital and attending physician. Chen Sun, the powerful business tycoon, appeared in the stairwell flanked by two stern-suited bodyguards. He nodded respectfully at me. Dr. Zheng, my father's life rests in your hands. I nodded. I'll do everything I can. Gao tried to charge forward, but was subtly blocked by the bodyguards, left roaring uselessly like a caged beast. I glanced at his haggard face and spoke softly, yet the words landed like a sledgehammer. Now do you see if my skill holds weight or not? He swayed unsteadily, skin deathly pale. I turned to Lee. Let's go. We can't delay the patient's treatment. We headed downstairs and climbed into the Maybach, the car gliding smoothly away, leaving Gao's despairing face far behind us. News of my move to Huimin and Mr. Chen's urgent hospital transfer exploded across the internal staff chat groups of Municipal Number 1 Hospital instantly. Did you hear? Dr. Zheng got poached by Huimin for an 8 million annual salary. Not just salary, she's chief surgeon and department director with official staffing. The worst part, Mr. Chen's getting transferred over to her care, that 100 million equipment donation's gone for good. Director Gao ruined everything, pushing his useless nephew into the director's spot. Galway got torn apart by Mr. Chen in the ICU earlier. Couldn't say a word back. I heard Director Gao showed up at her place to beg yesterday, got splashed with cold water. Then the Huimin director pulled up in a maid to recruit her. Unbelievable drama. Galway sat alone in his new director's office, scrolling the flood of gossip messages, trembling in terror. Before he could process the news, a nurse pushed the door open and slammed a resignation letter on his desk without expression. I quit. One after another staff filed into hand in their resignations. Meanwhile, seated in the back of the Maybach, I dialed Zhou Heng's number. He answered on the first ring. Zhou Heng, my voice steady and resolute. I've officially joined Huimin Hospital. Would you like to bring the reliable members of our team over to work with me? Absolutely, teacher. Without a second thought, he replied instantly. Go tally all skilled, trustworthy doctors and nurses in the department who are willing to resign immediately. I guarantee their salaries, bonuses, and benefits will all double compared to Municipal No. 1. Zhou Heng's voice shook with excitement on the other end. I'll get on it right away. I hung up and leaned back against the soft leather seat, watching buildings recede outside the window. Gao thought I was nothing but a replaceable technician that the department would run fine with his useless nephew at the helm. I'd show him exactly what a top-tier expert could take with her. I wasn't merely walking away. I planned to pull the rug out entirely, collapsing the foundation of the workplace that had spent 10 years exploiting, then humiliating me. Half an hour later, Zhou Heng messaged me. It's done. Our 3 attending surgeons with top surgical skills, 5 senior head nurses, and myself, 9 total, all submitted resignations to Galway. He went white as paper and collapsed in his chair, saying the cardiac department is finished. Hashtag Chapter 5. Huimin Hospital's operating suite was a dream come true, an ode-droning outdated machinery, no cramped cluttered spaces. Every piece of equipment was the latest German import, integrated intelligent environmental control systems, even surgical lamps calibrated to cast soft, precise light that never strained the eyes. Li Wenbo had kept every promise, clearing every obstacle from my path. He assembled the nation's elite anesthesiology and nursing teams at my disposal. All staff and equipment I requested arrived within 30 minutes flat. Before the operation, I met with Mr. Chen Sun, his eyes red-ridden and exhausted, yet forcing composure for me. Dr. Zheng, my father's condition? I cut him off, calm and confident. Give me 3 hours from now. I'll return your father to you in stable condition. My confidence stemmed from my one-of-a-kind technique and this state-of-the-art operating room that let me maximize its potential. The surgery was broadcast live via encrypted feed to hundreds of top cardiac specialists nationwide. I wanted every peer who'd ever underestimated me to witness the true power of minimally invasive bypass surgery. Beneath the shadowless lamp, I wore a surgical microscope, scalpel, and needle holders extensions of my own hands. Vessel dissection, incisions, suturing, every movement fluid, precise down to the micrometer, no wasted motion. On high-definition camera feed, the anastomosed vessel seam sat smooth and seamless on the beating heart, barely a trace of stitching visible. This was no mere surgery, it was ultra-precise artistry performed at the edge of a blade. The live chat room erupted with shock and awe. Is this humanly possible? Her hands operate like precision machinery. Unbelievable steady control. Vessel suturing at this level is beyond anything I've seen in decades of cardiac work. This isn't surgery. It's a masterpiece of medical art. Dr. Zheng's a genius surgeon. How could Municipal Number 1's leadership be blind enough to let such a star walk away? 2.5 hours later, the surgery concluded, half an hour ahead of my projected timeline. The sternum incision measured less than 5 centimeters, closed with cosmetic intradermal sutures that would fade to a faint red line after healing, the core advantage of my minimally invasive technique. When Mr. Chen was wheeled out with stable vital signs, his son, hardened tycoon unshaken by business battles, burst into tears and bowed deeply before me. The next day, Chen Group held a high-profile press conference. Mr. Chen's son announced the full 100 million yuan medical equipment donation originally earmarked for Municipal No. One hospital would instead go to Huimin. He additionally donated 10 million yuan personally to establish the Dr. Jiang Cardiac Surgery Research Fund, fully managed under my authority. My name dominated headlines across every major medical news outlet. Medical miracle. Dr. Jiang sets new cardiac surgery record. The genius female surgeons come back, forced to resign, yet catapulted to fame. A 100 million yuan stake, skill versus office favoritism. Doctors at Municipal No. 1 read these headlines in cafeteria break rooms, faces heavy with regret and mixed emotions. They finally grasped they hadn't just lost a lead surgeon, they'd lost the soul of their flagship department. Hashtag Chapter 6. Municipal No. 1 Hospital's cardiac surgery unit collapsed overnight. Outpatient numbers plummeted off a cliff. Hundreds of pre-booked patients canceled appointments upon seeing the news, transferring to Huimin to seek my care. The remaining senior surgeons lacked the expertise to carry the department's workload, and newly appointed Director Gao Wei became the hospital's universal laughingstock. He hid in his office daily, too ashamed to conduct ward rounds. Gao Yuan fared no better. The lost 100 million donation erased his key political achievement, with Higher Health Bureau officials summoning him repeatedly for harsh reprimands. Other department heads eyed him with unreadable, judgmental stares, desperate to salvage his reputation. Gao Yuan made a reckless, foolish call. He forced Gao Wei to perform an operation immediately to stabilize staff morale, even though Gao Wei knew he lacked the skill to handle heart surgery without risking fatalities. Threatened with consequences if he refused, Gao Wei reluctantly took the OR table. He'd selected what he deemed the simplest procedure, mitral valve repair. Yet standing before the patient, his hands shook violently, every memorized surgical step vanishing from his mind mid-operation. Mid-valve dissection, his scalpel slipped, lacerating the aorta. Blood gushed forth in a crimson fountain. The patient's blood pressure crashed instantly, the heart monitor flatlining with a shrill alarm. Massive hemorrhage, cardiac arrest. The anesthesiologist screamed. Chaos engulfed the OR. Gao Wei froze rigid, scalpel clattering to the floor. A veteran senior surgeon rushed forward to take over, barely stabilizing the patient after frantic emergency intervention, but prolonged oxygen deprivation left the patient permanently comatose, a vegetative state born from a routine minor heart operation. The patient's family unfurled massive white protest banners in the hospital lobby scrawled with bloody characters, "Incompetent physician endangers lives." They wailed non-stop at the entrance, recounting Gao Wei's negligence to every passerby. Reporters quickly picked up the story, drawing direct comparisons between my flawless procedure at Huimin and this catastrophic medical disaster. The viral expose laid bare Gao Yuan's nepotism, pushing unqualified family members into critical leadership roles while driving away the hospital's top talent. Online commenters lambasted Municipal No. 1 Hospital relentlessly, its ratings and reputation on every medical platform tanked overnight. Gao Yuan was hauled in for hours of dressing down by supervisors. Gao Wei suspended pending investigation, his mental state deteriorating rapidly with hallucinations and self-harm reported. The once arrogant uncle-nephew pair became public pariahs till I read the news from my bright, clean Huimin office, utterly unmoved. This outcome had been entirely predictable. Incompetent leaders prioritizing personal connections inevitably court catastrophe. Gao Yuan and Gao Wei had reaped exactly what they'd sown. Hashtag Chapter 7. To salvage the hospital's shattered reputation, Gao Yuan finally swallowed his pride and came begging to see me. One afternoon, I was in my new laboratory leading Zhou Heng and core team members researching a new clinical project when the assistant knocked quietly to whisper, "Director Gao from Municipal No. One's been waiting at the reception desk for 3 hours to see you." I didn't lift my eyes from the microscope slides. Let him wait. My team exchanged knowing glances and returned to their research. None thought my response excessive, considering the humiliation I'd endured at his hands. 2 more hours passed before I finished the day's experiment plan and slowly removed my lab coat to head to the reception lounge. Gao sat restlessly on the sofa. He appeared to have aged a decade overnight, graying hair lined with exhaustion. All traces of his former bureaucratic authority vanished. When he spotted me, he shot up, forcing a stiff, fake smile onto his haggard face. "Dr. Jiang, it's such a relief to finally see you." I sat opposite him without a word, watching coldly as he dragged a dejected, gaunt Gao Wei forward. "Xiao Wei, apologize to Dr. Jiang at once." Gao Wei staggered and bowed a full 90 degrees, voice thin as a mosquito's hum. "I'm sorry, Dr. Jiang. I'm worthless, a fool. Spare us and the hospital." Tears and snot streamed down his face. I felt no sympathy witnessing his pitiful display. Why regret it now? Gao Yuan grew desperate, pulling a blank checkbook and ink pad from his briefcase, placing it before me in a posture of complete submission. I was blind and bureaucratic before. I wronged you. Name any condition if you'll just come back as a part-time technical consultant. Fill in whatever amount you want on this check. If you return, you'll hold full sway over the hospital. A faint, mocking smile tugged at my lips. Director Gao, didn't you once claim my skill held no value? I stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Huimin's brand new medical research tower. A single ultra-high-resolution microscope in this lab alone cost 30 million yuan, more valuable than the entire goodwill he claimed to offer. I fixed my icy gaze back on him. Want me to return? 2 conditions. You and your nephew Gaowei are both fired permanently with no chance of rehire. Then you kneel and apologize to all hospital staff. Only then might I consider delivering a free lecture for your junior surgeons occasionally. Gao Yuan's face flushed deep scarlet, rage surging through him, yet powerless to retort. I'd repaid his public humiliation tenfold. He trembled, pointing at me with hollow threats before dragging the broken Gaowei out of the room in disgrace. A cold smirk tugged at my lips. Regret had never belonged to me, and he would soon learn the true weight of despair. Hashtag Chapter 8. After I publicly humiliated him, Gao Yuan flew into a vengeful rage, pulling every string and leveraging his old authority to sabotage Huimin Hospital. Random fire safety inspections, fabricated sanitation violations, spurious medical waste compliance, complaints flooded our administration daily. Yet Li Wenba's social standing and connections ran far deeper than Gao's petty influence. Every harassment attempt was neutralized effortlessly, never disrupting normal hospital operations. Li warned me during a private meeting. Watch him closely. Cornered men will resort to desperate measures. I acknowledged his warning, yet the fatal evidence that would bring Gao down arrived far sooner and more unexpectedly than anticipated. That evening, Zhou Heng rushed into my office clutching a USB drive, the same one I'd left with him upon resigning from the old hospital. Teacher, I found something critical. He plugged it into my desktop, opening a password-locked compressed folder hidden inside a subdirectory labeled Discarded Drafts. I'd entered my employee ID as a guest password, unlocking the archive instantly. The file held a meticulously detailed Excel spreadsheet tracking 3 years of cardiac stent and artificial valve purchases at Municipal No. 1 hospital, model batches, and clinical adverse event rates, including thrombosis and restenosis. Several overpriced imported stents exhibited shockingly high complication rates, and every single problematic model had been personally approved by Gao Yuan, bypassing official tender processes entirely. I'd casually logged these clinical observations out of professional concern years ago, intending to submit a formal report once I'd gathered sufficient data. Those random notes had become ironclad proof of his abuse of power and reckless disregard for patient safety. Even more damning was an audio recording saved alongside the spreadsheet. I hit play to hear the oily voice of a medical device sales rep pressuring me to stock faulty implants with promises of hefty kickbacks. I'd flatly rejected his bribes back then. As he turned to leave, he muttered to my assistant, unaware my recorder was still running. This Zheng Rance is stubborn as a rock, won't take a cent of kickbacks, not like Director Gao, who pockets more commission per stent than our own profit margins. That single line was the final nail in his coffin, hard evidence of massive commercial bribery and corruption. Zhou flushed with excitement. This is irrefutable proof he's finished. I closed the audio file, my gaze hardening. The ultimate weapon for justice had landed in my hands at last. I copied all files intact and handed the duplicate over to Li Wenba. Director Li, it's time we strike back. Li scanned the evidence, his expression sharpening. Rest assured, I'll ensure this leads to irreversible consequences for him. Hashtag Chapter 9. After consultation, we ruled out public media exposure. Gao's connections might bury the story and launch counter-libel lawsuits. Instead, we chose the most official, lethal channel available. I personally drafted a 1,000-word formal real name accusation letter, detailing the clinical risks of defective medical consumables from a surgeon's professional perspective, attaching all data tables and the critical audio recording as core evidence. Li leveraged his network to deliver the full dossier directly to the Municipal Discipline Inspection Commission and National Health Commission senior leadership, bypassing intermediate layers entirely. A lightning-fast investigation unfolded. 3 days after submission, a joint task force combining disciplinary auditors, tax officials, and national medical experts descended unannounced on Municipal No. 1 Hospital mid-morning. Gao Yuan was addressing all mid-level managers in a meeting, pontificating on integrity and professional ethics when the conference doors burst open. Uniformed investigators stepped forward to present official paperwork. Comrade Gao Yuan, you're under investigation for serious disciplinary and legal violations. Please accompany us. He turned ashen on the spot, flanked by 2 officers and escorted out before hundreds of stunned hospital staff. Every financial, procurement, IT, and cardiac surgery record was seized and sealed for review. Gaowei was immediately separated for questioning as an accomplice. The medical device firm offering bribes was shut down overnight, its executives detained for interrogation. Faced with overwhelming physical evidence and coordinated pressure, all involved confessed the full network of kickbacks and corrupt dealings Gao had orchestrated over years. Wong suppressed grievances from hospital staff poured forth during interviews, exposing Gao's nepotism, exclusion of competent talent, and autocratic control over every department. A tangled web of corruption spanning medical procurement, construction projects, and staffing appointments was fully uprooted. Municipal no. One hospital, the century-old medical institution, underwent its most thorough house cleaning in history. Hashtag Chapter 10. 1 month later, official investigation results and disciplinary sanctions were publicly released. Gao Yuan was stripped of party membership and civil service employment, prosecuted for massive bribery and abuse of power, leading to severe medical safety hazards, sentenced to 15 years in prison with all illegal assets confiscated. Gao Wei, complicit in bribery and responsible for the life-altering medical malpractice, received a 3-year suspended prison sentence and permanent revocation of his medical license, barred from ever practicing surgery again. The hospital's entire leadership underwent a complete overhaul. Deputy directors and mid-level administrators tied to Gao's corrupt network were dismissed or investigated en masse, the hospital's management structure rebuilt from the ground up. Its Tier 3 Grade A accreditation faced potential downgrading due to the scandal. The municipal government's solution was clear. Bring me back. 3 separate delegations visited my office within a week. The first consisted of the new hospital director and deputy management, humble and earnest in their pleas for me to let bygones be bygones and rejoin the team. I instructed my assistant to turn them away. The second group included the city's health bureau chief bearing official municipal documents, offering full authority as chief cardiac surgeon if I returned. I still refused. The third delegation arrived with the city's deputy mayor leading the entire new hospital leadership team to my Huimin office. This time I agreed to meet them. The deputy mayor poured me a cup of tea himself, tone sincere and remorseful. On behalf of the municipal government and all staff of Municipal No. One hospital, I offer my deepest apologies for the mistreatment you endured. Gao Yuan was a stain on our medical system. This hospital raised you, nurtured you. Now it's gravely wounded and needs your help. The new director bowed deeply before me. We humbly request you accept the position of Executive Vice President, with full authority to reform medical staff and institutional practices as you see fit. They already addressed me as Director Jiang. Only 2 months had passed since I'd been driven out as a disregarded department candidate, yet now the hospital begged me to take its highest administrative role. Colleagues flooded my WeChat with desperate pleas. Director Jiang, please come back. The department's falling apart without you. The entire medical industry watched to see what choice I would make, weighing between triumphant homecoming or permanent new life at Huimin. I stood staring out Huimin's windows at the lively garden below, lost in deep thought. Hashtag Chapter 11. I ultimately scheduled a small press conference to state my decision clearly to all reporters and industry observers. Cameras lined the venue, packed with journalists. Municipal No. One's new management and Huimin's leadership team. Dressed in a simple white professional suit, I stepped onto the podium without prepared notes, meeting every gaze calmly. First of all, I wish to express gratitude to Municipal No. 1 Hospital. IT was the foundation where I grew from a novice medical student to an independent operating surgeon. I trained countless peers and saved hundreds of patients there over 10 years. Those years remain an irreplaceable part of my life. The hospital representatives teared up listening. However, my tone turned firm. A sound medical system cannot rely on a single savior or fleeting heroism. It demands institutions that truly value expertise and protect dedicated clinicians, allowing pure physicians to focus solely on healing without bureaucratic distractions. I will not return to Municipal No. 1 Hospital to hold any administrative leadership post. A murmur swept the venue. I formally announced I would remain chief cardiac surgeon and lead researcher at Huimin Hospital, continuing my clinical and scientific work. Simultaneously, I would donate the 10 million yuan research fund awarded by Chung Group plus personal savings to establish a non-profit youth cardiac surgeon training foundation open nationwide, providing full tuition and top-tier mentorship to young specialists lacking resources. And the foundation's primary institutional partner will be Municipal No. 1 Hospital. I paused, scanning the crowd. I welcome every dedicated young surgeon there to apply for training opportunities. I will also deliver regular academic lectures and live surgical demonstrations at the hospital without charge. My physical presence may not return, yet all my technical expertise I will share unreservedly with its staff. The audience fell silent, stunned by my unexpected stance. No one had anticipated I'd reject the glory of a triumphant comeback to embrace a far broader vision. The new hospital director and deputy mayor rose in unison, bowing respectfully from the podium. Li Wenbo was the first to applaud, the applause swelling to fill the entire conference hall. Former colleagues flooded group chats with messages praising my profound perspective. In that moment, I earned universal respect, not through power or rank, but through the true moral compass of a physician.